Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to Analyst presented to you by Vajiram and Ravi. Here we discuss 7 articles in 2 different sections, consolidating your current affair preparation for UPSC CSE at one place. In the first analysis section, we discuss the need to accelerate India-European Union Free Trade Agreement. We discuss this in the context of uncertainty in the India-US trade deal. India-EU FTA need to be fast-tracked for mutual benefits. Next up, we discuss the issue of road safety in India. We discuss this in the context of release of a joint report on road safety as well as organization of a road safety week in India from 11 to 17 January that has brought spotlight again on this issue. In the next simplified section, we discuss 5 articles with a lot of value addition in perspective of your prelims 2026, so stay tuned. Starting with the first topic, the need to accelerate India-European Union Free Trade Agreement. We see this in the light of the delay we have been seeing in the India-USA Free Trade Agreement not happening, and that is majorly because of the emboldening of the US economy under the President Donald Trump. He is perhaps elevated because US economy for the past, after a very long time, they have registered a 4.3% economic growth in their GDP in the third quarter of the year 25-26. And while that may be a cause of joy for him, it is seemed by the scholars that it is not going to be lasting very long. It is not a very durable economic growth. It is not a very sustainable economic growth. And why do we say so? We say so because the tapering off is in the offing. The economic growth that is USA is witnessing right now, it might taper off very soon, it might decline very soon, because it is built on the idea that AI strengthening that the US, the overcapacity in AI that it is promoting, it would continue to happen. It is also functioning on the method that the revenue that it is generating out of imposing lot of tariffs on the countries like India and China, it would be used for the infrastructure development, and the market in US is bullish on it right now. But if we look closely in the US economy, we see that consumption growth is heavily skewed towards the upper section of the society. It is not very equal society there, so there are high chances that it would taper down, that it would slow down. Once that happens, US being one of the most important import destination for Indian goods export have to look forward to other directions. Similarly, if we look at the other countries of the world which are the major trading partners of India, like the country like China, they are also in elevated terms. Their exports have risen to, their trade surplus per se have risen to $1.17 trillion. They have got this much export upsurge right now. But if we look at their broader long-term economic growth, we see that while it was growing in the in the decade of 1980s, around the rate of growth was around 8 to 10% of the GDP per year, it has now fallen below 4%. So this is important because China also does not seem to give to the world the hope for an eternal growth. Now, if China is not giving that, USA is not giving that, then where does the growth lie? Actually, we have the growth seemingly in the new offering, a new partnership of India and European Union. Why so? Because European Union, if we see, is the second largest trading partner of India after the GCC countries. If we take it in the number of grouping of the countries, European Union emerged to be the second largest. If we take it in the manner of separate countries, then the numbers would be different. There we would have US and China in the first and second place respectively. But if we take if we take the regional groupings, EU, European Union lies at the second position among all the trading partners of India, because we trade around 120 billion euro worth of good every year. It is not dollar, it is euro. If we take it in dollar, it would be around 160 billion dollars. Now, why it is so important for India? Because we have such a good trade surplus also with the European Union. If we look at it from the European Union's perspective, India is their 9th largest trading partner. But if we take it overall, India just composes only 2.4% of all the trade that European Union does with all the countries. Of all the trade, India only constitutes 2.4%. Whereas if we compare with USA and China, their number are 17 and 14% respectively. What does this show us? This shows us that while European Union is a bright spot, it is also a vacant spot. It is a partnership that is still in the offing. We could have much more trade with the European Union, especially when these two formidable partners of European Union having their growth seeming tapering off, their growth declining over the period of time. And it is not just the economic complementarity in terms of the goods. We have complementarity with in terms of the people, in terms of the service provider. Why? Because if we see the WTO, World Trade Organization's GATS, or General Agreement on Trade and Services, we say there four modes of trade in services are there. Even in the fourth mode, which allows for movement of natural persons from one country to another, even in that opening we see a proposal for India and European Union to combine with each other, because India, as we know, is a labor surplus country. We have a lot of demographic dividend, whereas European Union, being a developed country, being a developed region, they have a shortage of laborers. And with the recent India Germany ties going upward, and we seeing a lot of relaxation given to Indians in the Germany regarding movement of people. We have even given transit free visa there. So we see a lot of negotiations possible about the movement of people from India to European Union under this new India EU free trade agreement that is in the talks right now. It is not just also about economics. If we talk about the opinions of the various scholars, they say that FTAs do not really create any new form of trade. It is just that they formalize the trade that has already been happening. It just streamlines the regulation process, because they have given us data to showcase that. They say that if before FTA was signed with between India and ASEAN, the ratio was 10.8%, and after FTA the ratio actually declined to 10.2%. Although the decline is very marginal, but then it also shows us that it is not a major change that would happen in the number of volume of trade that we are expecting. FTAs happening between two nations or two groupings also showcase a lot of political realignment of their goals, and that is what we are witnessing here. In terms of complementarity with its not just economic, we see that EU right now is having a lot of disagreement with respect to the United States of America, their policies. For example, disagreement on the issue of Greenland, where USA on the one hand wants to annex Greenland, despite both of the Denmark and USA being a member of NATO organization. And all the European nations, most of them actually are not in favor of this demand of USA. They have also scrambled a lot of aeroplanes to the Denmark's position in Greenland. So this showcases a position which is at loggerhead between European Union as well as US, that gives a lot of opening for European Union to align with other nations, other middle powers like India. There is also disagreement with USA on the issues of Israel and Palestine. There are also divergences on the issues of multilateralism, whereas USA on the one hand is pursuing a unilateral policy of exiting out of major agreement that it has already been part of. For example, UNFCCC, for example, International Solar Alliances. EU, European Union on the other hand, is a promoter of the idea of multilateralism. It is a supporter of the idea of strategic autonomy, because it wants to adopt an autonomous position on various global issues. It does not want to toe the line of European Union that allows for a lot of strategic convergences between India and European Union happening. That would make this early completion of FTA between India and EU a major milestone in that direction of realignment. Now, if we move forward, the recent upsurge that we are witnessing in the India-Germany ties is also going to provide a lot of impetus to this goal of India-European Union FTA going forward. We saw Prime Minister Modi flying kite with the Chancellor of Germany, and it is not just a symbolic measure. It is just not a symbolic gesture. It showcases the heights that India-Germany relations have achieved over the past. It showcases a change, a shift away from the China first in Asia policy that Germany used to follow. Earlier, the German Chancellor used to have the first Asian visit to the nation of China, to the Republic of China. Now they have changed the order. They first visited Japan and then positioned India above China. That showcases India as a central position in China in light of Germany's new policy. It is favorable for India, and that showcases well for us, because Germany, being the third largest economy of the world, being the largest partner, being the largest economy of European Union as well, there is a lot of complementarity that we share with Germany. We see that they have shifted from the idea of just a mere transactional system of buyer-seller relationship. They now agree to allow for joint co-development of various things. They have allowed for co-development of submarines as well as various other defense equipment. They have even launched the bilateral industrial defense cooperation has been announced in this recent visit. They are cooperating on the idea of green energy. A 1.24 billion euro worth of a partnership has been announced known as GSDP, the Green and Sustainable Development Partnership. This showcases the multi-pronged nature of our engagement with Germany. We have seen the progress on the contentious human rights issue like recruitment of healthcare professional, visa-free transit that has been given to the Indian nationals who pass through Germany to reach any other country. That allows for that showcases a lot of mutual trust that has generated between India and Germany, and this would augur well for our development towards this India-EU FTA. But sadly, the road is not all hunky-dory. There are a lot of challenges that lies in between this relationship, in between this early conclusion of India-European Union FTA. We saw that although on 20 out of these 24 clauses we have completed the discussion, 4 clauses are still remaining, but they are very contentious in nature. Why so? If we see the sensitive aspect of agriculture, if we see India and European Union, both of them value their farmers very much, and it is not just an economic issue but a socio-cultural issue also that emerges in respect of the trade with respect to the agricultural commodities. We saw that recently European Union signed a deal with the Mercosur countries. The Mercosur is an organization, a trade economic union of the Latin American country. They concluded a talk with them, they concluded an FTA with them, and the farmers of European Union, the farmers of French nation, they took their tractors and they reached to the city of Paris and they showcased their protest there. Similar outrage might even happen if such things are completed with respect to India also. Similarly, in India, we see a lot of protests happening by Indian farmers that happened in the year 2020 also, that happened in the RCEP negotiation also, which eventually made India exit the RCEP as a whole. Thus, these remain some of the flaws that need to be ironed out. If we talk about the manufacturing sector, moving away from the primary sector, we see that India, we have a production linked incentive scheme running for the 14 major sector. Automobile sector in particular is worth $250 billion in India. India is the third largest automobile market in the whole of the world. And if we compare that with the European Union, especially nations like Germany, Germany is known across the world for its automobile industry. The automobile manufacturers such as Audi, Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, Volkswagen, all of them belong to Germany. They have very high-tech cars that they want access to in India. But if our $250 billion worth industry is opened up to such foreign competitors, you would find they competing at the cost of indigenous manufacturer. Now you would argue that such brands are already available in India. How much difference it would make? You understand that these are the companies that are manufacturing cars within India right now. Else, if they import certain models of BMW and Mercedes, the top end variant of them, they are imposed with a 136% import duty because they are imported as CBU unit. The lower variants of those cars are actually assembled within India, so they are not imposed with such duties. If we are to come into an agreement with them, a free trade agreement with them, we would have to reduce or even do away with such import duties. This is precisely the reason that while you see a lot of Land Rover Defenders coming in our country, you don't see as many Hummers and Cadillac, because those are not manufactured in India, and if they are directly imported, they would be subjected to 136% import duty, being a CBU product, being a completely built up unit. Right now what we have is a CKD product, or completely knocked down unit. We just bring their part and assemble them here. That does not allow them, that skips this duty of 136%. Under this agreement of free trade agreement, they would want such duties to be reduced to a very negligible level, and that would hurt our indigenous manufacturer, the manufacturing capacity of our indigenous automobile industry. Even if some Audi industry is assembling in India, it is still generating some jobs in India. But if we allow them to import them directly, those manufacturing jobs would not be happening anymore. Not just this, you understand the socio-cultural norms that are different between both the countries that dictate our policies. European Union, especially the nation of France, the nations like Italy, they are world famous for the alcohol brand that they promote. The Bourbon, if you would have heard, is a very famous alcohol that comes from the region of France and Italy. The Mediterranean climate of France and Italy region allow for greater production of wines and spirit. On the other hand, in India, these are treated as a sin good and they are taxed heavily. If we were to enter into a FTA with the European Union, we would have to reduce import duty on such spirits and alcohol. That may not be catering to the socio-cultural policy of our nation. This is a major concern that is hindering the progress on this FTA. If we talk about the environmental norms, we differ on them as well. European Union has from the January 1 2026 has imposed something known as a CBAM, or a carbon border adjustment mechanism, that is levying excess duty, excess taxes on goods that are produced which are emitting a lot of emissions, goods that include heavy metals like aluminum, or production of iron, steel, cement. All of these things that India produces and exports to nations like European Union, they are being taxed heavily because they are not in sync with the European Union's idea of conservation of environment, even though they have been the promoter of industrial revolution that created this mess in the first place. But that being apart, they are now imposing this tax and we don't actually converge on these issues. There is differences on the labor laws. They want similar labor laws as exist in European Union to be complied to by Indian nations, by Indian companies, which is something that we do not actually agree upon. So there are a lot of issues that remain to be ironed out before we can successfully conclude this FTA. But there is still hope at the end of the tunnel. We can move forward in this direction by following certain steps. Steps like in the field of agriculture, we can generate at least a negative list. We can instead, even if we are not open to flooding our market with the imported goods, we can at least have a TRQs, or a tariff related quota system for import of goods of agriculture commodities from European Union and vice versa. We can have in the field of manufacturing, we can develop phased tariff cuts. Instead of just opening up market right away, we can have reduction of the tariffs at a gradual pace, which would allow our industry also to rise to the level of the European Union's tech advanced companies, so that our consumer are also given access to the global standard of the products. Then if we move about, the technology transfer is one way forward if we want to reduce the convergence, if we want to reduce the divergence between India and European Union on the carbon border adjustment mechanism. If they say that Indian industry pollute the environment a lot, it contributes to the climate change, let them share the technology with us. Let them allow for a greater building of economy through green method, allowing for technology related to EV, technology related to artificial intelligence, technology related to greener manufacturing of aluminum and iron. It would serve the interest of both the nations, because European Union would also get access to cheaper goods. It would reduce the imported inflation in their country also, and it would reduce its reliance on the other partners like China that they want to diverge away from. It is in part in sync with the China plus one strategy that the European Union is seeking to follow. Now, despite the best effort, we should also keep in mind that there might be some dispute that might arise in the future, and we should be prepared for that by developing some dispute redressal mechanism that allow for negotiations later, so that disputes are resolved in a time bound manner, giving a limit to that, allowing for a greater policy stability in both the nations. We can have some political buy-in, political pressure, political trust building, helping this early conclusion of FTA by various summit level outreach happening. We are going to witness the arrival of President of the European Commission as well as the President of European Union to India for the Republic Day parade, and we see such trust building activities at a regular interval allow for greater cooperation at various levels, because India and European Union are not just trading with each other, they have a shared value system through which they seek to develop a rule based world order in this global arena where everything is in flux. In that light, we end this discussion of this topic. There is a practice question for you. You must attempt it and get it evaluated from your mentors. Moving to the next topic, amid the celebration of Road Safety Week in India from 11 to 17 January, we saw a report being released by Ministry of Road Transport and Highways along with the NGO called Save Life Foundation, which gave a staggering amount of data on the issue of road safety in India. It is catering to this part of GS paper 3 regarding infrastructure, where road is a crucial part of it, and in GS paper 2 regarding the government interventions in the field of road safety, that we discuss this issue. If we talk about the data, which is the matter of the fact, we see that at least 59% of the road accidents that happen in India, it is not because of somebody violating the law. It is merely because the infrastructure that we are supposed to drive upon is very poor. If you see the numbers, at least 53% of the deaths that happen only between the time period of 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. That is the time period when most of us are returning our home from our work, from our colleges, from our schools. This is also because it is precisely the time when traffic density is high and when light or the visibility is very low. We don't have enough street lights to counter such encounters, to avoid such accidents on our roads. There is a major issue of road safety in India because of this infrastructural bottleneck that we see, but also we see that there has been expansion of infrastructure in India. if we see that India has the second largest road network in the world. We have 63.5 lakh kilometer worth road, but still we are after USA. But still, if we compare, even if USA has more roads than us, it only contributes to the 25% of all the deaths that happen due to road accident. India in the year 23-24 had encountered at least 3.5 lakh people losing their life on road. USA only 25% of that. China only 36% of that. What does this tell us? This tells us that there is still a lot of road to move forward in the idea of road safety in India. And there is a specific issue here. If you see, it is not just that infrastructure. Even if we build such excellent infrastructure, people tend to go to such heights, and this irresponsible behavior is one of the major contributor to the issue of road fatalities in India. We see that of this 63.5 lakh kilometer worth road that we have, only 1.5 lakh kilometer worth road are considered as national highway. That is merely around 2%. But if we see the numbers, 37% of these deaths due to road accident happen on these national highways, and merely 67% happen on non-highway roads. 2% roads contributing to the 37% of the death. Why is the infrastructure so bad? Yes, that could be one factor, but then we have to also agree on the irresponsible behavior that we follow on the road. If we see other numbers, 54,000 people lost their life just because they were not wearing helmet. 16 per thousand just because they were not wearing seat belts. We see other factors also. Even if you don't remember all these micro numbers, you understand that it is a combination of various factors that contribute to the idea of road safety, to the idea of road fatalities in India. If we broadly analyze the drivers of road accident in India, unsafe driving behavior is one of the major cause. We see high incidence of rash driving. At least 2/3 of accidents are happening due to excessive speed. Of all the issues, apart from these 59%, I mean, if we take away 59% and out of those 41%, if we see those human error related, 2/3 of them happening due to high speed driving. If we see weak enforcement and compliance, we have a police which is overburdened, which is understaffed, which is underperforming in this method because they are not able to enforce rule of law on road. We see a lot of risky driving behavior on road. We see a lot of rash driving, road rage issues. All of these contribute to the accident, the fatalities on Indian highways that we see. And then poor road infrastructure is nothing to write home about. We see at least 42% of these fatalities that happened on the road, they happened on the critical corridors. What are these critical corridors? This organization, Ministry of Road, Transport and Highway and Save Life Foundation, they have identified at least 100 most prone districts in India which cause most number of deaths. And if we see that out of these 100 districts, there are certain critical sections which are more prone to the deaths, which are more prone to these accidents. And at least 42% of the deaths are happening on these critical corridors only. 72% of the fatalities were recorded in rear-end head-on-head or pedestrian crashes. That means the lower strata of our society, the poor people who are either pedestrian or using a two-wheeler, they are one of the major victims of these issues. Apart from these class differences of poor and rich, we see also a regional disparity happening in India. Of these 100 most prone districts, 20 of these districts are located in Uttar Pradesh, 19 of them are located in Tamil Nadu. This showcases that it is not a one-size-fits-all approach that we can take in road safety. There are a lot of consequences that we have due to road safety. It leads to physical harm and disabilities. Of course, it leads to death, but also it leads to something known as DALY, disability adjusted life years. That means for the remaining life of that person, he would not be as productive as he could have been. This is a major reminder which serves him lifelong that he should not have drove that fast that day. It leads a psychological impact, it leads to trauma, it leads to something known as PTSD, post-trauma symptomatic disorder. It leads to loss of human life and creates emotional damage with the people. It leads to equity concerns because most of them are pedestrian, as we discussed. Most of them are poor people who don't even have enough money to pay for the treatment. We have economic issues because it leads to loss of GDP, the very demographic dividend that we are so proud of. At least 5 to 7% of that GDP of ours is lost due to these accidents because we are having at least 1.7 lakh deaths every year. If we combine it for 2 years, it was 3.5 lakh deaths happening every 2 years in our country, the most in the world. We see a lot of rising social costs, because it is not just that people are dying on the road, there are also disputes that arise out of it. People lose a lot of time engaging in the courtrooms, paying for the fees for judicial decisions on these issues of accident. In the first place, if we could avoid them, nothing like it. We have taken certain steps regarding it. The government has been cognizant of the issue. They have mandated certain safety features, certain technological interventions to curb the issue of accidents in India. By the norms of Motor Vehicle Amendment Act, they have only allowed to sell only those vehicles which are equipped, only those four-wheelers which have airbags as a standard equipment. ABS is a mandatory feature in cars nowadays. They have come up with an indigenous form of testing the vehicles, which is known as a Bharat NCAP system, which is new car assessment program. They would assess the structural stability of the shell of the car, how it would prove in terms of an accident, how much pedestrian safety it is offering, whether the driver would survive the crash or not. On that basis, cars are ranked on the 1 to 5 stars they are given. There is an amendment to the Motor Vehicle Amendment Act that showcases that legislative changes are being done. It happened in the year 2019, where the penalties for violation of traffic laws were increased. Apart from that, e-challan system has been introduced in India, by which the CCTV cameras would monitor the speed of the vehicle. Overspeeding vehicle, they are remotely sensed and they are challaned for that electronically, reducing disputes on the roads. Apart from the central government step, states specific steps have also been taken. For example, the Uttar Pradesh government, which started something known as a Rahavir scheme, which is nothing but a scheme that promotes the good Samaritan. If somebody would pick some accident victim on the road, they would be cash rewarded with 25,000 rupees, and no harassment of good Samaritan would be done. But these are not enough. We need more suggestions for road safety. We need more implementation of these suggestions. For example, it has been suggested that comprehensive road safety survey must be conducted by the National Highway Authority of India, Public Works Department of various state government, to ensure that the roads are classified in a very predetermined manner, that there are these list of recurring issues that happen and they are classified in that order, and then we know the frequency of the causes of road accident. It would give an idea of data-backed decision making. We need site-specific intervention. There are organizations like we saw the Save Life Foundation, which is an NGO. There is an organization called as Indian Road Congress, which works in this field of road safety in India. They have developed certain interventions that could be taken at specific sites, and these must be used to reduce the chances of fatalities on the road. There is need for greater density of trauma centers, as we saw that most of the accidents, at least 37%, which is disproportionate to the amount of roads that we have in India, they are happening on the national highway. So there is much more need to establish such trauma centers along the highway, so that in the golden hour of the accident, the victim could be allowed to reach the hospital in time and their life could be saved. After that, we need to upgrade the police infrastructure. We need to ensure the police reforms are done so that their capacity to enforce law is enhanced. They must be having more and more number of interceptor vehicles on road. They must be having more manpower to allow for taking challans, for conducting motor vehicle enforcement on the roads. Not just the police, but also the Road Transport Authority, the RTOs, their capacity must also be enhanced so that they can inspect the vehicle properly. So see if there is any issue in the functioning of these vehicles. We see a lot of bus accidents happening of late, that buses catching fire because they were not having authorized sleeper sections that were constructed in them. There were faulty AC lines that were visible in those buses, and they catch fire, that leads to death of a lot of people. We saw those incidents happening in Rajasthan, we saw those incidents happening in Telangana also. So their authority, their capacity of RTOs, that also must be expanded. That would reduce the issue of road safety in India. We need better systems, we need clearer authorities, we need responsibilities instead of devising new schemes. There is need for awareness of the user. We can use very catchy slogans in that time. We have BRO, Border Road Organization, working in the region of Ladakh and Lahaul and Spiti Valley. They use very catchy symbols to catch the attention of drivers so that they adhere to the law. We can have media campaign where celebrities also promote the responsible behavior. On one side, we have Shahid Kapoor of Kabir Singh, who rides a bike with very good sunglasses but no helmet. On the other side, we have this very handsome South Indian actor who rides a bike with sunglasses but also with a helmet. Now, this is the hero that we want for our society. This is what would nudge our road users, our youth, for a very safe road behavior. And that was about this topic. We have a practice question for you. Kindly write it and get it evaluated from your mentors. Moving to the next topic, film certification process is a pain, is a punishment in India. It is catering to the aspect of paper 2, GS paper 2 fundamental rights issue. It is also relating to the various mains topic. A mains question has already come on this topic where they ask that film certification, they stand on a slightly different plane from other forms of expression. Discuss. This is a previous year question from the year 2014 of GS paper 2 of UPSC CSE. But before we first discuss it, let's decode what is the film certification process in India like. The body that is established for the purpose of film certification in India is the CBFC, Central Film Certification Board. It is a statutory body. It was established under this Cinematographer Act in 1952. So it is giving certificates to the various film. There are 4 types of certificate that it gives. One is U, which means universal. One is UA, under adult supervision. Then we have adult only. Then we have special audience. These are the 4 types of certificate that it gives before any film could be released in the theatres. This is the legal structure. What is the process of it? Why it is such a pain? First step is that one, as a film director, one has to submit a common application form on a portal of this organization, which is known as e-Cine Praman. On this portal, one has to register, pay the requisite fees and upload the movie. They would see and ask. Then you would have to submit the application for the observation. One is just a common application form. Then you would have to submit the application for the particular film that you want a certificate for. They would, once you submit it, they would observe it and then they would give you some recommendation or rather advice that you have to do certain editing in that before it could be given a certificate. Once you have done the correction as per the observation of this board of CBFC, you have to submit it again. Now this seems like a very straightforward issue. This seems like a very straightforward process. But had it been as straightforward as it looks, we would not have so many headlines coming in news regarding the Vijay starer Jayanayagan film which is not being released by this board. There are a lot of issues here. The producer, the actor, they are moving from pillar to post, either going to High Court, then going to Supreme Court just to ensure the release of it. What is the issue here? The issue here is that the film certification, once it is given by once the certificate is given by the board, then everything is fine, or seemingly it seems like it's fine. But if the certification board does not agree with the courts, does not agree with the release of the film, or give certain suggestions for doing editing which disrupts the whole idea of the film, and the producer or the director don't agree with it, and then there is no issue, there is no institution for the appeal of it. Earlier we used to have one tribunal which was known as the Film Certificate Appellate Tribunal. It was abolished in the year 2021 only by this Tribunal Rationalization Act. It abolished certain other tribunals also, and this was one of the tribunal that was abolished. So after the decision is given by CBFC, if somebody is not satisfied with that decision, they have to either move to the High Court and then move to the Supreme Court. And given the condition of judiciary in our country with around 5 crore cases pending, it is nothing but an exercise that only increases the time, increases the duration, increases the financial trouble for the producer. We have various other issues as well. Because this is allowing for certification, it may sometime amount to censorship on the films also. This board is known for film certification, but in common language it is known as the censor board only. And why is that such a troubling thing? Because we have something known as the Article 19(1)(a) in our constitution, which talks about the freedom of speech and expression. And somebody should have that freedom of speech and expression could be done either through movies, songs, films, short stories. But since these things are not absolute in nature, they are given certain exceptions. There is a clause called 19 clause 2 which talks about certain restrictions. Some reasonable restriction could be imposed on that. Restriction including the relation with the foreign state, sovereignty and integrity of India, security of state, public order, decency and morality. Now these things that are mentioned in our constitution, by themselves they are vague and they are subject to the interpretation of this board, a board which is appointed by the central government, and the autonomy of board is questionable. In behavioral term, in functional term, what happens is there is a vague criteria allows for arbitrary cuts by this board. If the movie that is suiting the interest of the board or suiting the political dispensation, it may allowed with those scenes to be continued even if they are violent in nature, even if they exercise hate in the society, even if they lead to communal riots in the society, they might still be allowed. But on the other hand, if certain scenes are related to some political leader or a ruling party leader, if that is not agreeable to the party, if it is not in sync with the ideology of the party and in sync with the people who man this board, there might be delays in the issue, there might be delays in the release of that film, there might even not give the certificate only, there might be some issues that after even this board has given the certificate, it is still not a guarantee that the film would be released. This happened with the case of Padmavat. The movie was reviewed by the certification board, it was given a certificate, but despite that, since the ideology of the movie was not in sync with the society at large or a section of the society, it led to violent riots happening in the country, especially in the state of Rajasthan, because they said that it did not portray the historicity of the event, even though the director had claimed that the film was based on not on a historical event but on a narrative text written by a scholar known as Malik Muhammad Jaisi, who lived in the 16th century. The movie is set in the 14th century. So there was not supposed to be a historical accuracy there. It was just supposed to be a work of art. But then people have their opinion, and that leads to a lot of financial trouble for the producers, actors, organizers, as well as the small crew that depend on him. A lot of people's their livelihood are dependent on this film industry, but that is disrupted because of lack of a streamlined process of film certification and film passing in India. It leads to there is a problem of legal framework in India, because it is catering to the time period of 1952, when we did not have internet, when we did not have OTT over the top platforms which would release the movies in a newer format, short story formats. These are the issues that need a lot of reconsideration. We also need to understand that there is need for transparent decision making in this process, so that filmmakers are allowed to release the movies in time. It allows for the financial viability of the project as a whole. It allows for the OTT theater distinction. There must be different rules because the audience is different for the OTT as well as theaters. There is need for cultural pluralism also in the idea of certification, because regional issues might be different from the national issues. Portrayal of the regional issues may require a different set of ideas to be allowed to be done. For example, we saw a lot of issues, hue and cry happening in our country when Udta Punjab movie was released. It was a movie set in Punjab on the backdrop of the drug trafficking issues in the state. It showcased, it was said that the state was showcased in a bad light. Perhaps the drug problem in the state was not as bad it has portrayed. And a lot of cut were sought. And anything that movie would have portrayed would not have been exaggeration. If we now look in the hindsight 10 years after that movie was released, we are still witnessing the issue of drug trafficking even at a greater scale today. Thus, there is need for enhancing the idea of moving beyond moral policing. We need to move towards a transparent classification of the movies, so that we can promote artistic freedom, we can uphold the Article 19(1)(a) in letter and spirit, and give a lot of accountability to the certification agencies, so that people really know that which movie can be released, which movie can be produced, and the people who are dependent on these movies, their livelihood, the whole economy that it functions, they should have a clear-cut policy stability in our country. Moving to the next topic of India's first state-funded biosafety level 4 lab being established in Gujarat, which was inaugurated by Honorable Home Minister Mr. Amit Shah. What is biosafety level 4 labs and why are they useful for India? We'll discuss that. It caters to the aspect of biotechnology in our syllabus. If you remember this image, this is from the time of not COVID pandemic, but from the outbreak of Nipah virus in Kerala, which actually took the life of most of the healthcare professional, most of the doctors, most of the medical practitioner. They were contaminated by the virus and they lost their life in the line of their duty. To allow for a greater research of the most deadly pathogens, biosafety level 4 categorized labs have been constructed now. The first of which is funded by the state, is now launched in Gandhinagar, Gujarat. What is biosafety level 4? It is the highest biological contamination standard. It allows for the study of most deadly, most fatal pathogens to be studied in a condition of controlled environment, so that it does not impact the human who is studying him. There are certain features of these BSL4 labs. One is that they are HEPA filtered air circulation. What is this? HEPA stands for high efficiency particulate arrest. It allows for the air control system to be established in that lab, so that airtight negative pressure containment zone those pathogens do not impact the human who is studying them. There are 4 levels of such labs. In the level 1, there is not known to consistently cause any disease, and as we go forward in the BSL-4, we see such exotic agents which are known to have a fatal risk, which are prone to be very deadly, life-threatening. For studying such virus such as Ebola, Nipah virus, smallpox virus, we have created such labs with a lot of protective equipment for the people who study them. There are other levels in between, for example BSL-2, BSL-3, which have moderate and indigenous or exotic microbes that do not impact to such level. To study the most deadly pathogens, we have these BSL-4 labs. This is categorization of WHO. You may not remember the exact name, exact details, but understand that BSL-4 are the highest category of lab that could be established. We already had certain infrastructure, as we would discuss, in India, but this is the first state funded lab. How it would help us? It would be allowing the research on the group 4 pathogens of such quality like Ebola, Marburg virus, Nipah virus, or other zoonotic virus, and it would contribute for the health security shield of India. That would allow for indigenous research on this. Earlier we used to be import dependent on foreign labs for research on such things. Now we can have those research right here in our own country, and this would allow for greater biosecurity, greater pandemic preparedness, greater biodefense of India, because we are also witnessing the issue of bioweapons being utilized against various nations, and we have to be prepared for that. If we talk about the existing infrastructure of biosafety labs in India, we see that Government of India had created an infrastructure. They had planned to create in the year 2021. They planned for 42 virus research and diagnostic library VRDLs. Out of them, 41 are BSL-2 level and only one is BSL-3 level. If we talk about the BSL-4 level, we already had one of them, which was located at National Institute of Virology in Pune. This was a civilian infrastructure. It was a private entity. Now the government has also created it. Also, apart from the civilian, we have a military by a BSL-4 level lab, which is set up by the DRDO at Gwalior in the year 2024. So we have already 2 functioning BSL-4 labs in our country. There are other BSL-3 level labs at Bhopal, at Bhubaneswar also, who are studying the most deadly virus, most deadly zoonotic disease causing pathogens. But across the world, there are only 69 such BSL-4 labs, and out of them, now 3 are there in India. And that is a major feat that we have achieved in the field of biotechnology. Moving to the next topic about Commonwealth Speaker Summit. India has recently hosted the 28th Conference of Speaker and Presiding Officer of Commonwealth, which is known as CSPOC. This is an organization that we would study about. Now we discuss this. What is this CSPOC? What is this all about? This conference brings together the Speaker and Presiding Officer of majorly the nations of the Commonwealth. This was established in the year 1969 by the Presiding Officer of the House of Commons of State of Canada. It was Mr. Honorable Lucien Lamorix who started this organization. So it is not actually an initiative of Commonwealth, and you would find it very interesting that it has no formal affiliation with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association or the Commonwealth Secretariat or the Commonwealth Head of the Government. It is an independent initiative of the Speaker of the House of Commons of Canada. It was established in 1969. Its secretariat is also provided by the state of Canada today. However, it has a certain parameter, it has a certain criteria which allows that majorly Commonwealth nations are only the participant of this conference. It is actually organized with a 2-year cycle. This year, the president of which has been India, and that's why the conference happened in India. It operates on a 2-year cycle, and a meeting of standing committee of it happens every alternative year. So it has 3 major goals. It allows for the independent functioning of the speakers of these houses of the parliament. It allows for understanding of the parliamentary democracy in its various form. It promotes the parliamentary institutions development. These are its major goal. But if we see broadly, if you have read this news in the newspaper, you would have also seen that the chairperson of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, of which we clearly said it is not a part of, this person, the chairman of it, also participated in it. Now CSPOC is different from the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. But what is this CPA all about? This CPA is actually one of the oldest organization of Commonwealth of Nation. This is a direct part of it. CSPOC is not a part of it. This Commonwealth Parliamentary Association was formed in the year 1911 and it has various members. Even their sub legislatures are also the part of it. At least 180 legislatures are part of it. That means while the Commonwealth has 56 nations, their sub legislature, like the, let's say, the Legislative Assembly of the state of Uttar Pradesh would also be a part of it. They could have sub members, and the whole idea is the pursuit of positive ideals of parliamentary democracy. Basically, the ideals remain the same, that they all promote the idea of political parliamentary form of democracy. They discuss the functions, the nuances of it to improve the functioning of parliamentary democracy in various parts of this commonwealth of the nations. Now, once we have discussed this, let's also discuss about the Commonwealth of Nations, what it is about. Commonwealth is basically originated in the first half of the 20th century, when the whole this British Empire was breaking up, and several nations like Australia, Canada, Ireland, they were seeking the self-government. Even India was also in that line. But India got independence in the year 1947. Some of them got other form of self-government even earlier. So these nations who are actually sovereign in their respect, in their functioning, they still acknowledge the rule of British King. So this King Charles even today functions as the head of the Commonwealth of the nation. It was formed by this Balfour Declaration, something that you must remember, that in the year 1926 it was formalized at the British Commonwealth of Nations through this Balfour Declaration. By the Statute of Westminster of 1931, Westminster is a place in London which actually has the address of this House of Commons, the British Parliament. Then, while earlier it was an empire-linked body, once India got independence in 1947, it actually gave a London Declaration, this British Commonwealth. It adopted this London Declaration, which changed the orientation of this Commonwealth of Nations from being an empire-linked body to becoming a voluntary organization. So India joined it voluntarily because it allows for greater interaction. It allows as a framework for interaction with these 56 nations, allowing for mutual relation building in terms of international relations among these nations. Moving to the next topic of tax liability on Flipkart despite the double taxation avoidance agreement. This comes in the light of, despite having a double taxation avoidance agreement between India and Mauritius, a company known as Tiger Global, which actually was a shareholder in the Flipkart company, they had to pay taxes because of a recent Supreme Court judgment. Why is this happening? We discussed that, we understand the whole issues of it. But what kind of tax are we talking about? It is basically a LTCG tax, a long-term capital gain. Imagine if you own an asset and your asset has appreciated over the time, you would be liable to pay tax on it. That tax would be called as a long-term capital gain tax, because the asset that you had, that is appreciated over time. Now, if you have held that asset for a longer duration than 36 months, then you would be encountered with an LTCG, or a long-term capital gain tax. If the asset that you held was less than this 36 months, you would be encountered with the STCG. Of course, the short-term capital gain tax would be at a higher rate of 20%, whereas if you hold an asset for a longer time, you would be encountered a lesser amount of tax, which is 12.5%. This category might be different, the time period might be different for different varieties of assets. For example, this is more useful for the assets like land ownership. If you were to talk about shareholding, if you hold a share for more than 12 months, it would be considered as under the long-term capital gain. If it is less than 12 months, then it would be short-term capital gain. Now, this was about the capital gain tax, the variety of it that is levied. In this case, what was happening was that this company, Tiger Global, was a Mauritius-based company. It held the shares of a Indian subsidiary of a Singapore-registered company, which is Flipkart. Flipkart is not an Indian company, it is registered in Singapore, it is incorporated in Singapore, and it sold it to somebody known as Walmart, which is then a USA-based company. Now, because India and Mauritius had something known as the DTAA in place, or double taxation avoidance agreement, that allows that if a company which is having business at both the places, if it were to pay taxes in one country, it would be exempted from paying taxes in another country. Now, if they are taking advantage of it, they said that since we are registered in Mauritius, we would pay taxes in Mauritius and we would not pay taxes in India, and that's what they claimed. But then it was rejected by the Supreme Court, which said that it was actually a mechanism to allow for tax avoidance, because they were using something known as a grandfathering clause. What is this grandfathering clause? If we discuss the grandfathering clause, it is basically a legal or a regulatory practice that allows for changes that have happened in the law to be given some exemptions to the entity to allow for a seamless transition. Now, before this DTAA agreement happened between India and Mauritius in the year 2017, the entities were operating here. To allow those entities to operate seamlessly, they were grandfathered. That means they were exempted from the changes that happened to this. This was a provision in that. To understand this better, let's take the example of you and your family, including your grandfather, going for a very good meal at a buffet based restaurant where everybody is charged on a per person basis. You are very hungry, your father is very hungry, other members of the family are very hungry, and they are very young and they would be able to digest everything. But since you know that it is a buffet restaurant, you have to pay on the per person basis, not on how much you have actually eaten. You requested the manager that, see, my grandfather is very old, he would probably have just a soup or something. Please, if you could excuse him from paying the whole amount. Then the manager, being a very compassionate person, if he allows that exemption for your grandfather, that means that grandfather has been exempted from that. And that is how you would remember that if grandfathering clause is used, it means that certain exemption is given, that this new provisions would not apply to you. You just take time to adjust to the new mechanism. You have been saved from it. Supreme Court in this case actually said that this grandfathering clause would not apply here. They would have to pay the taxes because it was just a preordained discussion, a preordained treaty that they did, that one entity registered in Singapore, which is Flipkart, which is held by an entity which is registered in Mauritius, which is this Tiger Global. They are now selling it to third company which is registered in USA. It is just a mechanism to avoid taxes, and you're still going to pay taxes. That is what Supreme Court said here. But now you must be thinking that why are we discussing, why are these such countries being registered in small nations like Singapore and Mauritius and everything? Mauritius, as we know, is a country located in Indian Ocean region, located just south of the equator, just to the east of this island of Madagascar. While it is very beautiful and known for its pristine beaches, it is also one of the leading promoter of FDI in India. Singapore accounts for 30% of FDI in India. Mauritius also account for 17% of FDI in India. It is even greater than USA, which only account for 11% of all the FDI that come in India. If we were to make a mnemonic of all the FDI, we would remember it by this mnemonic of Suman G, which is Singapore, Mauritius, USA, Netherlands and Japan. This is the order in the descending order of FDI in India. The top 3 states, if we are discussing about FDI, the top 3 states that receive most FDI is Maharashtra, Karnataka and Delhi. In this order they receive FDI in India in the various sectors of country. This was about this topic. Let's move to the next topic, which is about some Booker star who have reached to the Jaipur Literature Festival. It is relating to the topic of GS1 literature, awards in news also, prelims. In the prelims, they have asked certain questions on the awards that have been given to various people. The 1 year in the year 2021, they asked about the Laureus World Sports Award. So it becomes very important for us to understand that what is this Booker Prize, why it is in news. Booker Prize is basically a literary award in the world. It is given by the nation of Britain. It was actually earlier open only to the member or the people from the Commonwealth nations. Now anyone can be having this award regardless of their origin. It is only given for work written in English primarily. So the year 2025 saw the person named David Saleh, who was basically a British Hungarian, being awarded this Booker Prize in the year 2025 for his book known as Flesh. This was about him, but there is a different award which is known as International Booker's Award also, and that is what we are primarily concerned here, because the people that you see here, Mrs. Banu Mushtaq, she is an Indian, she is from Karnataka, and she has also been awarded this International Booker Prize. What is this International Booker Prize? International Booker Prize is awarded to those people who are awarded for the literature which is written in any other language, but there it is translated to English. So while this Booker Prize would be given to one person, the International Booker Prizes would be given to 2 persons. One would be the original recipient of it and one who would have translated it. Very recently in the year 2022, we saw Miss Gitanjali Shri, who was awarded this for her novel known as Tomb of Sand, which was named in Hindi as Ret Samadhi. It was translated into English by a person known as Daisy Rockwell. So both of them shared the £50,000 award that was given. In the year 2025, which is in news, Miss Banu Mushtaq, she won the award for her Kannada literature known as Hridaya Deepa, which is now known as Heart Lamp. It was translated into English by Deepa Bhasti. So these are the names of people who are in news, and these are the people who are actually reaching out to this Jaipur Literature Festival that is being organized in the city of Jaipur, capital of Rajasthan right now. Why is this important? If you understand that Jaipur Literature Festival or JLF is considered as the primary literary award on earth, it was established in the year 2006. It had two proponent. One is Miss Namita Gokhale, and another was actually a British origin person. He's an historian, very famous historian known by the name of William Dalrymple. He has written various famous books, and in this Jaipur Literature Festival we see the presence of various Booker Prize winners, Pulitzer Prize winners, various scholars of literature, various other prominent personalities who are contributing to the development of intellectual field in our country. So becomes a place where a lot of interesting ideas concerning the society of today is discussed. That was about this topic. Thank you so much. Best of luck.